So in this video here, we're going to begin talking about the broad jump. When we begin, we want to be standing up as tall as possible. And as we're doing that, we want to fill the stomach with air into our abdomen, just like we would at the bottom of a squat. We want to fill our stomach with air, build up some abdominal pressure, and then as we drop, we want to drop violently. Think about leading with violent arm swing down and back. So those arms are going to swing down and back, which allows us to drop our shin angle. So if we notice, when we're standing straight up, our shins are going to be somewhat straight up and down. As we drop forward, look at the new angles at our shins. And this is what allows us to point and drive force backwards, which allows us to come out at the angle for maximum distance. We're looking at approximately 45-degree angle that we travel out of. So further, when we drop, our center of gravity goes out in front of us. So right here, my center of gravity is right over top of my feet. And as I drop, now my center of gravity is way out in front of me. As we swing forward, think again about the arm swing. A lot of people in this broad jump want to focus on legs and pressing the floor away and reaching with the feet. But again, it's violent arm swing down and then a violent arm swing forward. And that we should get right into a straight line here about when our toes are ready to leave the ground. So our arms should pass right by about our ears, right by our head, when my toes are about ready to leave the ground. The goal is to keep our back flat and our head neutral. With a back flat and our head neutral, that aligns the spine. And when our spine is aligned, we move more efficiently. Same thing, we're up tall. So this athlete here, you can see in the bottom frame, isn't bringing the arms up as high as possible. We're not taking full advantage of our arm swing. And this is important because our arm swing can take up to about 10 to 15% of our jumps and our speed. So if I'm here, if he's only using 80% of his arms, that takes away X amount from our overall power in the jump. Next, we'll look at our hips. So here, he's over-exaggerating and hyperextending himself to help preload his hips. Find what works best for you. Personally, I like to stay in a neutral line like we've seen with the previous athlete. We're not bending back too far. His hips are more so staying in a neutral position. And then his hips drive back. And then his hips will drive forward, little hyperextension there. One way to think about this is my hips start by going back, so his hips went back at the start, and then his hips are going to drive forward right there, which is creating a lot of the power in this jump. So drop those hips back, drive those hips forward. Once we leave the ground, you'll see that our leg action looks similar to sprinting if you just focus on one of his legs. So if he's sprinting here, he's finishing pushing into the ground. His legs are going to cycle around and then go back into the ground again. That's one reason why broad jumps are important to combine training, is it's similar to the same force application and force vectors that apply to sprinting or horizontal bursts. So as we get into the air, we want to try to bring our knees and feet forward in front of our hips to help us reach. So because he does a good job of reaching, and this is a good freeze frame of the toe touch jump, which is a drill that's in the drill section, he's able to get further on his jump. But imagine if he didn't bring his feet forward and his feet were underneath his body, say here, then that's obviously where his feet would touch first, is wherever his feet are. So getting our feet out forward is very important. Drills that are in the drill section will help cue this, but it's very important to have a strong trunk, anterior core to help pull those muscles forward. So referring to this area of the body here and our hip flexors to be able to pull those knees up. So our abdomens, our hip flexors, to get those knees to drive forward and reach. And the last thing we'll touch on here is it's important to have good hip mobility. So look how low he is in his squat here. He's a little below parallel. And that is because he has that mobility, it allows him to control himself into this low position and not fall over, so we're able to measure. So just in this freeze frame here, this is a tough position to maintain. His shins are almost vertical, his hips are lower than his shins. But because he has that mobility and that body control, he's able to control himself into the bottom of this jump. So I can't speak for all football coaches, but if I'm watching one of these videos, or I am at a combine, and if the athlete doesn't have enough control to land the broad jump, that says a lot of things to me. First, namely being body control, but lack of mobility, lack of stability. If they can't control themselves out of the broad jump, how well are they going to be able to control themselves onto a football field? And this can be practiced by simply jumping and practicing your landing, or sprinting and practicing your stopping. Landing a broad jump and decelerating out of a 5-yard sprint are very similar. Practicing that body control will be helpful not only in these combine drills, but also on the field. Last look here, we'll look at everything together. A little more arm swing, but still this athlete's not using quite full arm swing. Arms get almost straight as the toes are about to leave the ground. Again, we can see not using the full arm swing. We would want those arms to look more like that. Leaves the ground, brings knees and feet in front, reaches, and controls himself into a low position. Remember, you can fall forward as long as the feet don't come up. So the feet didn't move, so he did a great job controlling himself, and get a measurement.